Will Michael Cohen flip? Want to dig into it with our panel of legal experts. Alan Dershowitz, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, author of Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. Our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. And Mimi Rocah, former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, now criminal justice fellow at Pace Law School. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Professor Dershowitz, let me begin with you. The president clearly agitated by all this pressure on Michael Cohen. He also called the raid on Cohen an attack on our country. After those raids, how serious is the threat to Cohen and Trump?
Oh, it's a very serious threat. This is an epic battle for the soul and the cooperation of Michael Cohen. And prosecutors have enormous weapons at their disposal. They can threaten him essentially with life imprisonment. They can threaten his parents. They can threaten his spouse. They have these enormous abilities to really put pressure and coerce a witness. On the other hand, the president has a unique weapon that no other criminal defendant or suspect ever has. He has the pardon power. And go back to Christmas 1992, when President Bush exercised that pardon power and pardoned Caspar Weinberger, precluding him from pointing the finger at him.
Put a lot on the table right there. We'll get to each of it in turn. But Mimi, I got to go to you first, because I saw you sort of squinting as Professor Dershowitz was talking about all those threats the prosecutors can make.
Yeah, I have a response to that. You know, look, that's not what prosecutors do in my experience, having been one for 16 and a half years and having, worked with many of them across different districts, including New York. They do not threaten people's parents and children. I mean, I don't know what, it sounds good, but I don't know where that accusation is coming from.
You want some examples?
But if I could, what they do with cooperators is, especially a cooperator like Michael Cohen, they don't trust him to begin with. They don't just take what he says and write it down. They listen to what he says. They're skeptical. They test it against other evidence. They try to corroborate it. They don't just take at face value.
So you don't get a deal
says.
until you're certain, or as certain as you can be, that the potential cooperator is telling the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely
Let's be clear, though, about this issue of cooperating, right? He can't cooperate on attorney-client matters, right? The president could invoke the privilege and say he's not allowed to talk about private conversations that we had as attorney-client.
Separate from business matters.
Correct. But my point is, they're going to be, everyone's sort of presuming that Michael Cohen could just flip on everything. He could just turn the president in if he decided to do that. If he decides to cooperate, there are going to be a lot of questions as to what he's actually allowed to disclose. When was he the attorney? When was he not the attorney, et cetera? And I still think it's unlikely that he's going to flip on him.
Why?
I think one of the things that struck me, and this is kind of a media thing, is immediately after the raid, Michael Cohen made phone calls to various mainstream media people. And it struck me that, gosh, for a team that shows such disdain for the mainstream media, why call these sort of big figures in the mainstream media if that's the position?
Well, Michael Cohen has always had deep ties to media.
Yes, he has.
There's no question about that.
None of this stuff matters, and it doesn't matter whether he likes the president or doesn't like the president. What matters is the sword of Damocles hanging over his head. Michael Milken, they told him they were going to indict his brother unless he pleaded guilty. Jonathan Pollard, they told him they were going to indict his wife. I can go down case after case after case.
But that may be because
prosecutors
they were
have
involved in criminal activity.
Well, of course, that's the point.
But to say that the government threatens people's relatives with no basis about their conduct.
I said they threaten relatives, and then they create the basis. They wouldn't otherwise go after these people, but they hold these people hostage. That's what prosecutors do. Every defense attorney knows that. And to look in the camera and say that prosecutors don't threaten relatives is to mislead the American public. Sorry.
I disagree, obviously. But the other point is that, cooperators, I just have to keep coming back to this. They're not going to just take what he says at face value. They're going to test it. It's not going to be a case written down what Michael Cohen says.
And they already have some documents.
Correct. They have lots of evidence. We know that because they got a search warrant. And the search warrant, was based on probable cause to believe that Cohen...
But against Michael Cohen. I mean, we keep sort of lumping in Cohen and Trump.
That's actually where we should begin right now. The point is that Michael Cohen is now under serious threat. He's had this raid. We've even had the judge in the Stormy Daniels case say that it's very possible, if not likely, he's going to get indicted. We've seen another attorney he worked with flip as well. After a raid like this, the chances of an indictment quite high.
Very high. Very high that he's going to be indicted. But we have to separate out the two. They got a warrant here not because there was information on Donald Trump that they wanted from Michael Cohen. They got the warrant because there was information on Michael Cohen potentially committing a crime.
If you believe that, I have a bridge I can sell you in Brooklyn.
You're actually going to say that a judge signed off on a warrant?
Absolutely.
To get
you can get judges to sign off on warrants like Christmas presents.
Right.
Yes.
To get information on his client. So they signed off on a warrant saying, we want information on his client, not on him.
There's no way in which they would go after Michael Cohen if they weren't interested in his client. They're interested in his client in two different ways.
Because
Number
there's
one,
no way he could have committed a crime by himself.
He might have, but
right?
they wouldn't have even looked at what he was doing if he weren't the president's lawyer. They're going after him for two reasons. One, to try to flip him, and two, to try to find information that would show that there's an exception to the lawyer-client privilege under the crime fraud. You know, if you're going to...
Who's the they, by the way?
The prosecutor.
Well, which prosecutor?
The Southern District of New York.
Oh, okay, so it's not Mueller's team now.
They're working together. If they weren't working together, then Sessions would be back on the case because he only recused himself from the Russia investigation. If these were separate investigations...
So there's no such thing as independent work on the part...
Not in this case.
And in the District of Columbia, when they're investigating McCabe, that too is going to be hand in hand?
Absolutely. Of course, they're all working close together to try to target the president or people close to him.
I wanted to get to that. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
What is the significance of moving into the Southern District? Does that somehow protect the investigation if the president chooses to move against Rosenstein or Mueller?
I think it would have that effect of protecting it, but I don't think that's why it was done necessarily. I mean, obviously, I'm not in Mueller's head. I think it was done because Mueller did what any prosecutor and investigator should do. Came across criminal activity about, apparently, Michael Cohen, and we know that from the search warrant. And what's he supposed to do? Sweep it under the rug? No. And it doesn't fall within the mandate of what he's looking at. So he did the absolute appropriate thing, which is referred it to a U.S. attorney's office.
This is so naive. Came across. Mueller is looking for low-hanging fruit. He's looking for anything he can find against anybody who's associated with the president, so he can flip them.
But if it weren't there, it wouldn't be a problem.
Of course, but it's there. You know, crime, broad federal criminal statutes, campaign contributions, bank records. You can find them against almost every very complex business person or political person. The question is how hard you look. And when you look hard, you have enough for a search warrant, which is fairly minimal, and then the pressure increases.
Let me bring up the issue that Alan brought up earlier, the issue of a pardon. Again, the significance of that, one of the things that people have speculated about, it moves to the Southern District. If indeed Michael Cohen is pardoned either preemptively or after the fact by President Trump, this could move over into state court.
It could, but I think people are assuming that it would be pretty easy to prosecute in New York State court, for example, on the same set of facts. It wouldn't. First of all, in New York State, there is a specific prohibition against trying someone for the same facts as they were indicted for in a federal court.
And they're trying to get rid of that now.
They are trying to get rid of it, but it's still the law in New York State as of today. So I think those who are counting on the state courts to kind of come in on the white horse and prosecute anyone that Trump pardons are betting on the wrong horse, so to speak. It is not easy, and in New York, it's specifically prohibited.
So a pardon could be real protection for Michael Cohen.
It could, and I think the president is trying to use that. I mean, he keeps tweeting about it. I think these tweets and these phone calls to Michael Cohen, you know, the president should not be doing that. This is a witness in a case who at least potentially has information about the president. And that is just not something you should be doing with a...
There's a
any
downside
danger
to
that
a
helps
pardon.
build... Any danger that all these tweets on that point build up a possible obstruction case?
I don't think so. I don't think so. When you get the President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, pardoning, and the special prosecutor saying the following, in light of President Bush's own misconduct, we are gravely concerned about his decision to pardon others who lied to Congress and obstructed official investigations. That, it seems to me, makes it clear you can't go after a president for exercising a pardon. Look, there's another vulnerability in a pardon. You pardon somebody, he doesn't have a Fifth Amendment. So as soon as you pardon him, he doesn't need immunity. You call him as a witness, and he has to testify or else he goes to jail. Then the president has to pardon him for contempt, and it becomes very, very difficult for a president.
We're just about out of time. Before we all go, let me get your best judgment right now. You think Michael Cohen flips?
I think it's very hard not to flip when they're threatening you with long, long imprisonment, but I don't think we know the answer to that question. I don't know enough about Michael Cohen.
I don't think he flips.
I think he flips because I think he committed a lot of crimes, and he's got a lot of jail time that he's facing for that reason.
I think he's going to be pardoned. I think he feels confident about that.
Pardon?
I don't think he's going to be pardoned.
A lot of questions left out
You
there.
think Sheriff Arpaio is going to be pardoned? No.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.